Welcome to my house. Welcome to the Structure Talk podcast, a production of Structure Tech Home Inspections. My name is Reuben Saltzman. I'm your host, alongside building science geek Tessa Murry. We help home inspectors up their game through education, and we help homeowners to be better stewards of their houses. We've been keeping it real on this podcast since 2019, and we are also the #1 home inspection podcast in the world, according to my mom. Welcome back to the show. Tessa, how you doing today? What's new?
Hey, good to see you, Reuben. Not much. How about you?
Not a whole lot. I'm still on the quest to figure out what's going on with water heater anode rods, but that will be a topic we'll probably cover again in several months after I get a lot more data. But today, we've got a special guest on the show. We've got author R.K. Bob Brown. He has been in the foundation repair business for the last 35 years. He owned an engineering company, an architectural engineering company, and he is based out of the Phoenix, Tucson area. And he's got a new book out there called Foundation Repair Secrets: Learn How to Protect Yourself and Save Thousands. And it looked fascinating. And I got to admit, I did not have time between the time we scheduled this podcast and today to read the entire book. I'm waiting for the audiobook version because that's how I plow through just about everything. But there's so much in here that I thought this looks fascinating. So wanted to get him on the show and get some insider information on some of these dirty secrets of the foundation repair industry.
There's a bunch.
So it's R.K. Bob Brown. Is that correct?
Yes, that's how you find me. Correct.
Okay. All right, cool. So would you mind just telling me in your own words a little bit more about your history, about how you got in the foundation repair business, what your company did, and what prompted you to write this book?
So I graduated from Arizona State University with degrees in architecture and finance. And I started a foundation repair. Well, I actually started a concrete repair company many, many years ago and kind of morphed into a foundation repair company over time. And I sold the company 2 years ago. And I sold the forensic engineering company as well. And so I wrote the book because I'm kind of uniquely positioned owning both a forensic engineering company and a foundation repair company. You know, I kind of see what happens in the foundation repair world, and I also see the way it should be done, and there's a huge difference. So I wanted to make it my mission in life to help people navigate that and help them figure out the basics of the business and where to go and how to help themselves.
That's great and very much needed.
Yeah. So there's a few things you had in your book that really piqued my interest. And, you can probably guess the one I was most interested in was the title of one of your chapters. It was called The Dirty Little Secret of the Foundation Repair Industry.
Right.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, there's more than one, but the fact of the matter is the foundation repair. When you call up a foundation repair company, ring, come fix my, I got all these cracks in my house. Come take a look at it. Come and tell me, how bad is it? Tell me, is my house going to fall down? Tell me, is it going to get worse? They have all these questions, right? Yeah. Well, they send out a commissioned salesperson. How do you think he's going to answer those questions? He's going to answer them.
Repair.
It's, I've heard him say things like, oh, yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, your house is like an 8.5. And I'm thinking, wait. First of all, what scale is that? I've never heard of engineers using a 1 to 10 scale. Is that like some sort of Richter scale? And then I think, how'd you arrive at 8.5? And the answer is like, well, based on all the years of my experience and the fact that my kids need braces. That's kind of what it comes down to. It's a bunch of subjective BS that they go in and they pretend to do an analysis, but it's a sales pitch disguised as, it's masquerading as analysis, but it's really a sales pitch.
Okay. All right. Now we recorded a podcast. I'm pretty sure we did a podcast on this. I remember talking about it and getting whipped up about this. There is a foundation repair company in our area here in the Twin Cities where they get called out, or no, it's not foundation repair. It's wet basements, but they also do foundation repair.
A lot of basement repair are foundation repair in the northern parts of the country.
Okay, got it. Well, they go out and they use a moisture meter meant for wood.
Right.
And they hold this moisture meter up against the concrete, and it always says that there's a high moisture level because they're using it on concrete. And they always tell people you got moisture problems and you need drain tile and it's going to be $20,000. And they use this to sell stuff.
Right.
What is going on here?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of things, but part of the problem is that these guys that are doing the sales don't really have like degrees in anything. They're not engineers. They're not, they might be selling used cars a couple of years before, right? Sure. And so, especially when it comes to foundation work, it's all very geotechnical. It's more geotechnical than structural. And so, that's very complicated. A lot of people think soil is very simple, just a brown mass below your house, but it's not. It comes in layers, and all those layers are different mineral contents with different moisture affinities and different densities. And water travels between those layers and does different things. Like if you have clay, it expands when it gets wet. If you have maybe sands or gravels, they might contract. And each of them might be doing things all at the same time. So it's very complicated, which is why we have geotechnical engineers to help us understand it. And they're the ones that can answer those kinds of questions that people have. And they're the ones people should really call because, it's not going to be free like it would be a foundation repair company. You're going to have to pay. But liken it to this. Think of it this way. If you were really sick, would you go to a pharmaceutical rep for free and see what kind of pills he had? Or would you pay money and go to a doctor?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a good analogy.
Great point.
Yeah.
I think that was, I have not read your book, full disclosure, although I want to now. I've read through some of your blogs. And one of my takeaways from that was just, I really am, I'm always someone who's curious and wanting to learn new things. And I think what struck me was that being in this industry and home inspections for a while, I always thought, if there were foundation issues that we could see, if there was bowing, if there was shifting, offsets, large cracks, that we would recommend a foundation repair specialist to the buyer. And it sounds like that's maybe not the best recommendation for a lot of different reasons.
Right, especially if it's a real estate situation. If you want to blow apart your escrow, that's a good way to do it because they're going to show up and they're going to say, oh, yeah, you need $40,000 worth of foundation piers. And they'll tell you that almost every time, whether it really needs it or not. The guy that trained me originally said to me, he was from my supplier, of course, because all foundation repair contractors get trained by the supplier. And He said to me, I've never seen a house that doesn't need piers.
What?
That's the attitude they have.
And you said it. You quoted it best, but I think you said when you have a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail.
Yeah.
Well, if your only tool is a hammer, then everything starts looking like a nail. That's right.
Exactly.
That's a quote from Abraham Maslow, the same guy that did Maslow's laws, I think. And it really is true because these suppliers. They find a good contractor and then they train him, and then they train him with the tools they have to offer. So if there's a problem that they don't offer solutions to, then it goes unaddressed. So basically what you're doing is you're just getting a sales pitch for that supplier's tools. And if there's a problem that can't be fixed by anything that the supplier supplies, then it just basically goes unaddressed. And, I would say 90% of the time you can monitor it. You can fix the drainage. There's a lot of things you can do to solve these problems without spending a huge sum of money.
Sure. Interesting. Okay. So it probably depends on which foundation repair specialist you're going to and who they get their training from and what supplies that they're using on what they're going to recommend.
Right. And I'll tell you one more recent thing that's happening in the industry. Private equity is going around and buying up foundation repair companies because it's a very lucrative business. And before, it was a very unconsolidated business with a bunch of mom and pops, right? Now, it's owned by people like KKR and some of those big boys, Well, if you're a homeowner and you have a disagreement and you're going to go to fight with them, good luck. You're trying to fight somebody that's financed on the New York Stock Exchange. You are not going to win that battle. I guarantee you.
Sure.
Wow.
Sure.
Good point. Good point.
And, it kind of, that brings me to the next thing I wanted to ask you about. Another one of your chapters you titled, What a Real Foundation Investigation Involves.
Right.
And you've already said geotechnical engineer, but can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure.
What is actually involved in that?
I go through on my book quite a few things, and I'm actually I'm getting ready to put out an ebook that clarifies this and simplifies it a little bit. But there's really about 17 things that really should be done if you're going to do it right. The main thing is to do a floor elevation survey. And I've seen a lot of times, not all engineers do a good job with these either, by the way. I've listed a bunch of forensic engineers on my website, foundationrepairsecrets.com. And you can go on there and there's a directory for engineers for every state, at least every state that has them. And, but there, a lot of them just are not qualified. But to get back to your point, they should at least do a floor elevation survey. That's taking an instrument called a manometer, and about every 5 feet everywhere in the house, in every room, you measure the levelness, and you can put it into a computer program, and it gives you a 3D colored map that shows you where it's high and where it's low. And then if you cross-reference that with the damage, you can say, oh, look, all the damage is in this low area. Probably wasn't poured that way because of all the damage that's in that area. So, yeah, okay. The question is, oh, look, we got all this damage in the high area. What is that, if you're a foundation repair contractor, it's like, we're not going to pay any attention to that. We don't know what that is, It just means the rest of the house is extra low, bullshit, That's not what it means, And then you got to look at all the signs of stress. You got to do soil analysis. You need to do, your rainfall. If you're in the wet part of the country, it's a big difference between being in the dry part of the country. Everything's almost opposite, as a matter of fact. You want to know the age of the home. There's a lot of things that really need to be done correctly to do it right.
No, you talk about doing checking the level of all of this, and I know that here in Minnesota, we don't have a whole lot of slab on grade foundations. Almost everything, we got the foundation walls, and our slab is just a basement slab. It's just floating concrete. So I'm assuming what you're talking about wouldn't apply to our homes, but
it can. Right? I'll tell you how it can. When you dig out a basement and you put a slab at the bottom of the basement, what you've done is you've removed 10 feet of overburdened soil. So the soil underneath that now is like, whoo, all that weight's been removed. I want to go up, which may not do much, but if you have clay soils that get wet, they will go up, and they'll go up really easily with 10 feet of overburden removed. So, if you've ever been in a basement floor and you see what I call a 3-point crack, a crack that comes to a point and runs 3 different directions, and it's a little bit high right there. Yeah. That's from heave. That's from clay soils pushing it up.
Sure.
And
that makes sense.
So a lot of this stuff does translate. You just have to figure out exactly how it translates.
Okay. Now, for my inspectors in a lot of the southern parts of the country, I know I've talked to a lot of home inspection company owners where they have their inspectors use these tools. They've got these leveling tools, or not leveling tools, but they check the elevation of the basement floor all over the place, and they include that. It's just standard in their home inspection reports because they think it's so important down there. Have you seen any of those reports come back from home inspectors?
Not yet, but I do a lot of the training for like the ASHI inspectors and a lot of big groups, and come January, I'm going to start offering specialized online training and tools to help them offer this service, because my goal is to have information on every transaction, and that can be kept. And in 5 years of the next transaction, you can look back 5 years and say, okay, 5 years ago it looked like this, and now it looks like that. So during the intervening time, it changed this way. That's very helpful, super helpful to have that information.
Sure. So if someone were to hire someone to come out, I mean, what would they want to look for? Is there some type of designation or certification other than geotechnical engineer? I mean, is that just the one thing that you'd recommend someone look for?
Right now, it kind of is, because a lot of times people want to call structural engineers. And structural engineers are great. I mean, I've had many that worked for me. But the problem is, if they don't have any geotechnical background, here's what happens. They say to the customer, they write like a one-page report. A lot of times, structural guys won't even do a floor level. And they'll just say, well, your house is not structurally deficient. Well, okay, we knew that the house wasn't ready to fall down right now. Okay, so then we say to them, well, could it get bad? Oh, yeah, if it continues to move, it could get real bad. Well, is it going to continue to move? Well, that's a dirt question. You got to talk to a geotechnical engineer. So really, they're the only guys that can tell you if it's done moving, if it's going to keep moving, all that kind of stuff. They know the history of how the soils were deposited. They know the geology of the area and how it evolved. And they do a lot of borings everywhere, so they're very familiar with the layering of how it goes. I mean, it's obviously highly variable, but it pays to know an area, and a local geotech will know the area and be able to do that. And especially a forensic geotechnic. You don't want to hire just a geotech that does new construction. That's not going to help you. They're designing freeways and dams and buildings. No, you got to be a forensic guy, and it can't be, well, yeah, we've done a forensics every once in a while. No. You got to do it every day if you're going to be good at it.
Okay. And so if you're going to hire somebody to do a forensic geotechnical evaluation of this, what would someone expect to pay for something like that? I mean, I have no idea.
I'm telling you, it goes all over the map. And part of the problem is that geotechnical engineers, engineers in general, but especially geotech engineers, are way behind the times when it comes to technology, marketing, all that kind of stuff. And they feel like, and rightly so, I guess, well, if I'm going to put my seal to this, I got to go out to the house myself in person. Well, that makes it very expensive. You're going to pay $3,000 or $4,000 for that. But I've developed some technology and some software and training for the technicians, which is kind of like the same thing we're talking about for home inspectors, that offers a certification. And the tool that they use when they do the floor readings goes directly into the document that cannot be modified. So now, and the engineer sitting in his office can check in real time with his guy that's out in the field, kind of a lower paid technician, maybe like 1/10 the cost of the engineer, right? Mm-hmm. And he can say, hey, I'm seeing your results right now, because it's all done on, on the internet, on the web. And I'm looking at this low area and there's no damage. Go look for some damage in that area. Go look a little more closely. Or he might say, you get this one really high reading all by itself. I think that's a mistake. Go back and check that. And what that does is that gives a lot of confidence to the engineer that he doesn't have to go to the site. He can supervise remotely. And so then that brings the cost way down. And they can usually offer something like this for $800 or $900, which is, quite a bit of savings from $3,000 to $4,000.
Yeah.
And so we're hoping that engineers, if they get to know our technology and start using trained, certified technicians to go on the site, that the costs can come down for people.
Okay.
I mean, you got to be somewhat competitive with free. $3,000 or $4,000 just doesn't even compute with free, but
no,
for free. But
especially
maybe $800 or $900, maybe that might, right?
Yeah. And so if you have somebody come out, and they say, okay, well, this is a problem and it's going to need to be addressed. What does addressing these issues usually consist of? I mean, I know about all the most traditional foundation repair things. You know, you
Right.
put in helical piers, or you put in these straps and put in steel beams and like all these different things. What do you typically recommend?
Well, if you have settlement problems, so let's qualify that. If you have settlement problems, most of the foundation repair companies offer pretty good products: helical piers, push piers, those steel beams for straightening basement walls. Those are all really good systems, and they do a good job of fixing settlement. Or in the case of bowing walls, that's actually kind of a heave of a lateral heave. But nobody offers anything for heaving slabs. I developed a system to do that, but nobody's using it because nobody does a good enough investigation to figure out that it's needed. So it largely goes unused. Now, let's just talk about that for a second, because here's one of the problems in the industry. So homeowner calls 3 contractors out. Guess what? One contractor says, well, you need 12 piers over here. The other contractor says, no, you need 13 over here. The third one says, no, you need 25 all the way around. The homeowner's like, what do I do? They're not experts. How are they going to figure it out? They go with the guy that they're most comfortable with, which is the best salesman, which is going to be probably the least likely to design it right, because sales personalities are totally opposite of engineering personalities. And so it's better to call a forensic engineer, let him give you a design plan. If he thinks it really needs to be repaired, which chances are it probably doesn't, but if he does, then he'll say, look, I'm going to design a plan. You go out and get 3 bids for exactly. So now you're getting apples to apples bids, right? From contractors. Guess what? They're going to sharpen their pencil, and you're going to probably save every bit of money that you spent with the engineer. You're probably going to make that plus some back, just because everybody knows they're bidding, and the engineer is going to look over the bids, and there's going to be no hanky-panky games. There's not going to be none of this. Come back to the site, and while we're doing the job, we need to add 5 piers, and the homeowner's like, I know, but the engineer's like, nay, hog breath, explain this to me, you're going to have to justify this, and they're going to be like,
Sure. And what does your system look like when it comes to repairing houses that have problems with heaved slabs?
So the moisture level system is basically an aeration system. It runs, it's similar to a radon system. I'm sure you're familiar with radon systems.
Oh, yeah.
It's modified. So there's intakes and there's some controls that normally aren't there, but runs air through the gravel layer underneath the slab. And what that does is it allows dry air to come in, which radon systems don't do. And the idea is, as the air moves across the soil, it dries out the very surface of those clays. Well, when it does that, the moisture wants to wick up to that dry area again. And then, of course, it gets removed by the air traveling over it again. So it continues to do this over and over, and the dry area goes down and down and down as a result of that. And it eventually stops the heaving. In some cases, it actually lowers it, but it's complicated, and we don't usually promise that it's lowered. And some people don't want it lowered because that means they're going to have to fix everything again, because it might take a year or two. So we just try to say, look, we're trying to keep it even, and the controls in it, when it reaches a certain moisture content, certain dryness, it drops the fan down to a lower speed. So it's a kind of a maintenance speed that doesn't try to be as aggressive as it was before. Because we don't, I've had houses where we put the system in and it's dropped 2 inches and everybody's pulling their hair out. We try not to do that too much,
Sure. And so if you
Sorry to interrupt. I was just wondering, do you have any benchmarks for determining, like, yes, this foundation or this slab is going to need repairs? Like, if you see a crack that is wider than an inch, or an offset that's bigger than whatever, what are those benchmarks for you?
So I talk about this on some of my blogs and also in my book. And by the way, if anybody wants to sign up for my newsletter, you can get the 15 myths of the foundation repair industry and the 10 most common mistakes of the foundation of real estate people in foundation work. You get those for free. So because there's no way you're going to learn everything today. It's like drinking from a water hose.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
So the engineers
High
have
hydrant.
two measurements that they typically use. And foundation repair guys don't have a clue about these, by the way. They don't even know what they are. But it's called tilt and deflection. Okay. So tilt is very easy, tilt, right? If it tilts more than 1%, that fails to meet minimum standards. And if you have deflection, now deflection is defined as L over 360. L is the length over 360. And deflection is like a hump or a dip, right? A deviation from a straight line. And that's what does more damage than tilt. Tilt doesn't really damage the house that much. It's breaking it that causes all the stress and problems. So you want to look at tilt and deflection, L over 360 and 1%. Those are the benchmarks that engineers use.
Okay. So when you talk about deflection, I'm picturing like a foundation wall that has a big bow in the middle, and we've got these horizontal cracks that are running across. Would that be considered deflection if you're thinking about that plane?
That would be, although typically they're thinking of it in terms of slabs on grade. But if you have a bowing wall and it's deflected like that, absolutely, that's a problem.
Okay. And you're saying if it's more than 1%, now, is that just for a slab on grade, or could that be applied to a foundation wall, vertical foundation wall too?
I've never heard of applied to a wall, but it probably makes sense. If you have a 50-foot slab on grade or a basement slab or whatever, and it's out of level 6 inches over that 50 feet, that's more than 1%. So, for a wall, over 10 feet, it gets a pretty small amount. So,
yeah,
for basement walls, you're going to look at, did you lose, has it come loose from its structural connections? Are those loose? You want to look at those kinds of things. That's probably more of a structural activity than it, although, you want to know if the wall is going to keep bowing, the geotech will tell you that, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, a lot of times it seems like it's something that could be monitored over time, doesn't need immediate fix. A lot of it can be addressed with proper water management on the exterior.
That's right. You hit it right on the head. Get the drainage going right. You want to slope everything away, 6 inches over 10 feet away from the house, we can do the floor level 6 months from now or a year from now and see how much it's moved. We do what we call a subtractive manometer, and it prints out a colored 3D map of the change over time, which is really cool to look at because it tells you exactly how it's moved.
Okay, interesting.
So I want to circle back on a couple of things you said before we wrap up. I know we're getting to the end for time here, but one of them you said earlier on in the podcast is that you've got a directory of all these professionals in all the different states. And I think I found it. If I go to your website, it's foundationrepairsecrets.com.
That's it.
You've got a bunch of links right at the top of your page, and one of them says directory. You made it really easy to find. You didn't hide it here. I love that. And you've got a list of people in every state. Unfortunately, there's only one in Minnesota listed here.
Yeah.
But maybe that will change in the future. Maybe somebody will.
Well, I'm always asking people, hey, if you find a good one, let me know, because, it doesn't cost any money to be in my directory. I'm just trying to help.
Yeah. I love that.
I want to add them. If there's somebody good, I want to add them.
Yeah, I will surely be reaching out to this one company that you've got listed for Minnesota, just to have a conversation with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
See if it's people we like and we want to send them business.
Right.
Just refer them, and then
if you're a real estate person, you want to get to know these guys. If you're a listing agent and you see these kind of damages, you should already have in your back pocket a good professional like this, and call them up and say, hey, come do a survey on here, and tell me, if it's no big deal, then tell me it's no big deal. It might be. And then when the home inspector says, hey, I see something, you can whip out the stamped letter from the engineer that says this is no big deal. Oh, it goes away right away. Sure. On the other hand, if it's a problem, okay, let's get it fixed. And now the engineer can supervise the job, make sure it's done right, put a seal at the end of it. And now you can say to the buyer, hey, I have an engineer's seal. And trust me, that the repairs were done right. That's a lot more than this lifetime guarantee that these contractors add, because that thing is not worth the paper it's written on. that's a whole nother subject we could go into.
Sure.
Mhm.
Sure. Well, and another thing I just wanted to throw out there is you talked about subscribing to your newsletter. And
Right.
it looks like if I scroll down to the bottom of any page on your site, again, that was foundationrepairsecrets.com. If I scroll down to the bottom of any page, I see there's a subscribe to our newsletter thing where you just pop in your name and email. Looks
Right.
like that's super easy to do too. So I will put a link to your website in the show notes. And
Cool.
I just on the last point you were just talking about, can you elaborate on that a little bit more about getting
The
this
lifetime
wrong?
warranties.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So here's what happens. Work was done 5 years ago. You call up the contractor and you say, hey, I got all these cracks. What? You need to come out and warranty your work. You gave me a lifetime warranty. So then they send out their really experienced guy, and he says to the homeowner, yeah, this is from heave. And it says right here in our contract that, our peers don't solve heave. They can't solve, which is true. It's a heave problem, and we can't do anything about that. So have a nice life. And then the homeowner says, wait. If it's a heave problem, then didn't you misdiagnose it? Didn't you diagnose it wrong? And the contractor says, well, hey, we're not engineers. We're just dumb contractors, Of course, at the very beginning, they're telling the homeowner, wow, we're smarter than engineers, we're like, we're the greatest, And then at that point, they're saying, no, we're not engineers. We're just contractors. So like, we can't help it. We're stupid, And so that's one of many strategies. These contracts that you sign are like 10 pages long. There's all kinds of get out of free jail clauses in there. I mean, it's just, it's not good.
Sure.
Would
Okay.
you say that most foundation repair specialists out there do know that there's all these other methods and all these other potential problems that they may not be educated on, or that they don't have the supplies to fix? So they're just going to ignore that intentionally? Or would you say that give them the benefit of the doubt and they just haven't been trained in these other issues and these other methods, and they just don't know, and they have no clue, and they're just ignorant to it? What would you say, the majority of these foundation repair specialists fall into?
I would say it's probably, half and half, and some it's a little bit of one and a little bit of the other, and most of this and not less of that. They're just not real concerned about it because they don't, hey, it could be a little bit of heave, but we're just going to underpin it to make sure, that kind of thinking.
Sounds like we need better education out in that industry too, just to
Yeah.
teach these foundation repair companies that there's all these other potential problems and there's other solutions to them.
So
Yeah.
I also do training for the foundation repair industry, and I'm trying to get them up to speed so they do this properly. And I have some takers on it. I have about 20 companies that are learning how to do it properly. So, my mission is to try to make the foundation repair world a better place. I got plenty of money when I sold my company, and I've invested lots during the meantime over the years. I got more than enough money. I don't need the money. I'm just doing this because I can see there's huge problems that need to be addressed, and I'm hoping I can find ways to do it. And I'll do it any way we can. I'll go with the engineers. I'll do it with the home inspectors. I'll do it with the foundation repair all of it together will make the marketplace better for homeowners, and that's what I'm really aiming for.
I love it. Well, if people want to get your book or get more information about you, I think you can get it all through your website. I already mentioned
Correct.
foundationrepairsecrets.com. And there's contact you, all that stuff on the website here. So I don't think I need to throw out anything else. We don't need to complicate it. But thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate
absolutely.
it. This is
it's great being here.
This has been very helpful.
Yeah.
Hey, Reuben, is Structure Tech going to change your report writing suggestions when you come across, potentially concerning foundation issues?
The one thing, I mean, it's like when we see problems and we know it's a problem, if I see a 1-inch crack in a foundation and we got shifting, you need repair. I don't need an engineer to come out and confirm it or deny it. We're pretty good with that. The time when we recommend engineers is when we see something we're not sure. And the only person I've had in my pocket to recommend are structural engineers. I know a handful of them, and they do a pretty good job. But it sounds like a geotechnical engineer might be a good person to recommend.
Right. Well, and just to point out, that 1-inch crack could be from heave and not from settlement.
Yeah, I don't ever try to figure out which one it is.
Well, engineers are the only ones that are probably going to be able to tell you the difference.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I will probably be reaching out to this one person that you've got listed on your website and see if they're a good fit. And if not, maybe look for another.
Hey, if not, let me know, because I'm like everybody else out there. I'm trying to provide this, and I only looked them up and checked their website and a few other things. I don't really know that much about them, and maybe if you find a better one, let me know.
Well, I definitely will. All right. Well, Tess, great question to end the show. And for our listeners, if you have any thoughts, please reach out to us. Our email is podcast@structuretech.com. And we have got a great series where we're going to be interviewing home inspectors in other parts of the country.
Nice.
All right.
Stay tuned for
Thanks
that.
again for coming on the show.
You bet. Absolutely.
Have a good one. Take care.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.